It's 82 degrees in hazy Bloomington. We've got an air quality alert because, you know, them forest fires are back to raging out west and up in Canada. And I don't know how widely these pollution maps are being spread, but there's a website called Windy, and they've got all sorts of information, and it's oh man, it's quite incredible actually how much pollution is being just nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to notice, but it's just funneling into the Midwest up from Canada and like going straight through Montana and South Dakota and Iowa, Illinois, and then straight up just chilling out, and then it swings right back up into Quebec. It's really messed up. But that's why our skies are white right now instead of blue, and it's different from earlier in the year when in shadow regions it was kind of blue-gray haze. This is more of a like a red, yellow, orange haze.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's different particles or something.
It started out as a different material that before it
Yeah,
incinerated.
yeah, man, it's really weird in terms of like you can look out and see the haze and know it's from some sort of fire and not just like a natural occurrence of overcasts where it's like regular non uh combusted material clouds look gray and it's not like a positive thing in terms of like yeah it feels dreary when it's overcast but this like it makes you not want to go outside because you know you're gonna breathe in some shit that is not healthy for you and that's where
Well, we've
I
got
took
a.
out the trash earlier and it was like
You could taste it.
yeah and it hurt my like the it's like the particles like amplify the light or something almost where
Mm,
my eyes hurt from being outside even though like that shit wouldn't happen when if it's overcast.
yeah. Well, the warning includes particles below 2.5 micron, which is like virus sized. So it can enter the blood. We can absorb it transdermally. Like get it in your mouth. If you can taste it, you're absorbing whatever that crap is in the air, and it's pretty crazy how just go out, step outside, take a few deep breaths, and man, what's that flavor? I can't quite place it. It's the flavor of like 10,000 trees screaming. Or maybe it's hit farm country, and this is what fields of wheat taste like when they've burnt and traveled thousands of miles.
Right, it tastes like the material. It feels
Feels like punishment.
well that definitely is part of it but it feels like our species is being faced with the repercussions of our actions now constantly in terms of extreme weather.
Oh yeah.
Like the fire seasons are getting more intense and like the the floods are more intense,
Oh,
the
absolutely.
tornadoes, all of the storms or weather events or terrestrial events are more intense in a way that feels directly related to our um the collateral damage from human activity in terms of like I saw something recently. It's like the axis of the Earth has shifted, like, or the rotation shifted like 36 inches or something
I wonder how much
to
of
the
that
point.
much of that is due to consolidating mass, like metals, in
It
certain
was
developed
from
nations.
yeah, it was from like mining.
Yeah.
All the land displacement I mean, there's so many things that we're doing that are affecting the rotation of the planet, but like I know they'll try to assert or assign value to like one activity or one uh mega structure or something as to like give it context, and I think that makes it difficult to look at the cumulative um or collective responsibility that's not evenly distributed.
Yeah.
But it's like that mining happens because people buy computers when they instead of cleaning them.
Yeah.
So it's like there are a lot of things in terms of how our culture operates where our activities cause some of the problem, and the capitalist approach that at this point is about exploitation, um like unfettered exploitation in terms of like I don't even attribute that to capitalism ideology, because at that point it's like beyond capitalism. So I don't like to conflate excessive exploitation with the actual ideology of what capitalism is in terms of like shit's supposed to work in capitalism. Like if you buy a computer and you clean it, it's supposed to work. It's not supposed to break down. So like that theoretically is not a bad thing, but the exploitation that has devolved, or what we've devolved to in terms of the exploitation that goes on, is not that thing. So that's where I'm like, it's hard to even call that type of exploitation capitalism, because it's like, again, it's far beyond it at that point to me.
And I'm trying to figure out when my. Oh, I know I had to figure this out. Figure out when the processor was released. That's also not happening. So I've got a Dell Precision T3600. It's running like a 11 or 12-year-old Xeon at this point, and it's got I think it's got like 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it's all solid state disks and an NVMe disk or non-volatile memory disk, and then or drive. They're all drives, and it's a barnstormer. Like I don't have enough. I'm not running enough generally to make it slow down on anything, or maybe just my expectations are really like low for how things should load because I used an all-in-one for my like daily driver. Um, but when I use that workstation, it seems like it's fast as can be. Of course, it doesn't have any unnecessary crap, and I don't use it for web browsing. Um, and I have like a eighth generation i7, and it's lightning fast too. And I've seen some 10th generation Intel processors, and they seem unbelievably fast. Like everything's so quick, but none of them feel that much more powerful than my decade plus workstation. And I have my doubts that I could achieve the same kind of 12-hour plus runtime on a laptop without it overheating that I get out of a full size workstation. So I don't have any incentive to upgrade my computer system right now because I'm not even sure I would appreciate the speed increase. But I'm also not doing like video, and so I know that there are a lot of extra requirements when rendering video just for preview. That's actually a very resource intensive task.
Yeah, it's like there is really just there's a point in computing where if once you hit it, anything above it really is just excessive. And it's like if your computer doesn't hit that point, it feels like, oh, I need to buy like the biggest, baddest computer possible because something might feel like it's lagging, or you might see like frame rates drop or something when you're, playing a video game, and
Yeah, but like the
you're like,
only things that I
oh,
do that require excessive power is like making music, and that's not really well until recently it wasn't very GPU intensive at all. Now there's a company that's leveraging GPU power as a DSP, which is fucking awesome because everyone who has a video card now has essentially a high-powered DSP processor for their audio production. But that wasn't even a thing, and I never noticed it before. And so now that I have that kind of tool, it's like, oh, this is really cool. Now I have this extra processing power. So for my use case, I I I spec'd a system that was going to have like at least twice the capability of what I actually needed, and I've never hit the ceiling with it. And so it's just strange. Like I guess mobility would be kind of cool, or being able to like put it in a smaller location. It'd be nice if it made a little bit less noise because it has full size fans, but it's really not that loud to begin with. It's only loud during takeoff, and once it gets up to cruising altitude, it's like whisper quiet, or at least I just don't notice it. It's definitely not louder than a guitar amplifier. Like even a guitar amplifier that doesn't have anything running through it makes more noise than this computer. And so I guess I don't get. I feel like there's got to be some kind of limit. Once the circuit traces themselves, the micron, whatever the 7 micron or 5 micron or 3 micron or nanometer, like trace circuit traces. That stuff's so tiny. Like at some point, can they even make it smaller without making compromises to like heat dissipation, or do they or the microvolts become even smaller? At what point does it stop being? There's got to be a point of diminishing returns. You can't make them too small, otherwise physics gets in the way. Like
yeah, and
Intel's getting out of the NUC market. They're stopping building their microcomputer systems, their modular microcomputer systems, because Intel's fucking smart, and they see what's on the horizon, and these computer systems are not being adopted. In fact, like my understanding is a lot of the like Amazon, they've like led the charge in developing a whole new server grade processor. So it looks like Intel and AMD might actually be like racing each other out of the market. Like if Amazon can build
yeah,
its
that
own processing, they don't need Intel or AMD anymore.
it's going to be interesting to see how things play out.
Yeah.
There's
Uh,
definitely been a lot of movement in the processing space,
uh,
well, because of all the investment.
well, NVIDIA, they've got their NVIDIA Partners program, which forces computer manufacturers to completely change the naming of a model of computer. So, like, HP can't use the same name for the physical computer if it has an AMD processor versus if it has a GPU versus one with an NVIDIA GPU. They have to give it a completely new product line name, even if it's exactly the same computer physically on the outside. And they're actually trying to prevent their NVIDIA partners from installing the Intel Arc GPUs in their computers. And NVIDIA is a very powerful corporation. They've got they make the best GPUs. They can probably make their own entire computer if they really want to.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do start making their own, and it's just a matter of if they want to start competing directly, because it's like then they'd have to have an operating system or use one, and it's like I don't know if they'd want to go with like Linux, or
I mean,
that
they could probably just
going from.
they could run a
So go
Windows
ahead.
machine just as well as Intel. Intel
But I'm
sued them
like,
because they reverse engineered one of their chipsets and started creating support for quad core processors before Intel had officially released the spec. This was like 15, 16, 17 years ago, I think. Maybe more, maybe 20 years ago about. But I remember like it was I had just built a machine with an XFX motherboard that had all NVIDIA uh, like Northbridge and Southbridge chipset. Everything was NVIDIA. GPU was NVIDIA. The only thing that was Intel or was not was the processor. It was a quad core processor that it was not actually compatible according to Nvidia, but according to Intel, but according to Nvidia, it was like, yeah, it works, and it did, and it was a great computer. And then that product line got shut down. It's like their I can't remember the name. It was like 680 SLI something or other motherboard. It was black, had green or neon yellow and green uh, ports. That thing was awesome. I think that it'd be really easy actually for a company like Nvidia or even AMD, like because AMD already competes directly with Intel. It'd be really easy for someone like a company like Nvidia to just say, "Fuck it, we already make the most powerful GPUs that have ever existed, and we already make some of the highest end ARM processors or design some of the highest end ARM processors." I don't think it's a big leap to go into for. I don't think it would be a good big leap for them to go into mainstream CPU or CPU manufacturing. And I'm sure they already
you
know
would
the right
think. I
people.
mean, you would think, but I'm not sure. It's like,
But I don't know if that market's going to exist. That's the thing.
yeah,
Like if Amazon's server processors are, I mean they're working. They're doing the damn thing right now. Here, I'll pull up Amazon and I'll make them do like a few. I'll make them use a few clock cycles, and it's over. And if they can make their own CPUs that are capable of lifting their database and keeping it running like applesauce out of a jar, then they don't need AMD or Intel for server processors anymore. Nobody does because they can just rent space on Amazon's like was it their giant server system, lease time on Amazon.
that's true. But I guess where I'm coming from is like there are two things happening at the same time that don't necessarily end up offsetting each other, but they have the potential to
Yeah.
basically nullify each other in terms of like, yes, there's a distributed um, computing potential for commercial, but those same entities are looking to get into um, artificial intelligence and like that needs those same resources. So it's like the thing that happens to be the potential next wave of big investment in tech also needs those resources that they had just been building. So that's where I'm like, they may end up, instead of selling the computing power, they may end up using the computing power for their own artificial intelligence algorithms and then sell access to the algorithms instead of access to the computing power directly.
Oh, sure.
And that's where I'm like, if that happens, it it basically doesn't change the access level of being able to buy that type of computing power uh, from a cloud
So
while
so earlier this year, Apple made a complete port of their Logic Pro digital audio workstation over to the iPad. It runs natively on an M1 and M2 processors now, and my favorite nonlinear editor, DaVinci Resolve. It's made by Blackmagic. successfully made a complete port of Resolve to iPad that also runs on M1 process on ARM architecture. And so I think what's going on is a lot of, like, in the music industry, there seems to have been a really large push towards portability, and people really like iPads. And I think that since a lot of that software is going to be coded for M1 because Apple's using that or their ARM architecture because that's what Apple's using in all of their platforms in the future. Um, I think that it's what's being demonstrated is that mainstream computing can accomplish a lot of things that relied on heavy lifting in the past, but those things aren't really necessary anymore. At least not for the way that people are using technology. I think those things have changed a little bit, and I think that the market for people like myself, who in the past would have bought a giant workstation and have a decade-long relationship with a computer, that kind of situation is not common anymore. I think it's more likely that someone's going to buy a high-end laptop than a giant cased computer. And if that individual can accomplish all of those things on an iPad or a large tablet, then I think the tablets is oddly where things are going. It's not like wireless keyboards and mice don't all of a sudden stop working because it's a tablet format instead of a an all-in-one or a desktop or a laptop. And then, of course, with smaller computer formats, the push for energy efficiency always comes in. And I don't know. I just don't. I don't think that, like, super high-end processors are going to go anywhere. I don't think that's possible. I just think that the market is shifting in such a way that it's more like the realm of institutions, research groups, academic institutions, departmental stuff. That's where those kind of computers will exist. Kind of like they did earlier in the early days of computing and supercomputing.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate perspective on where those things end up. And part of it is like, additionally, where does mobile computing go? And I mean, like, obviously cell phones, but like, how much smarter do smartphones need to get? And I don't think it's much smarter
I
in
mean,
terms of like, sorry, go ahead.
I have a sixth generation iPad, and it can accomplish 90% of my mainstream computing needs. And the only things that it doesn't do is connect with certain peripherals with ease. But it's still possible to get a lot of things to work as long as it's already on Apple's hardware compatibility list, which is very restrictive. But, for all normal person type computing stuff, a mobile device that is, I think, like 4 years old now, that has an aging processor and limited RAM and limited storage is more than capable for my needs. Which is really kind of, I think that's like one of those things that, like, I don't think mainstream computing has excessive requirements anymore. I think I think that's like the realm of gamers, dedicated gaming systems, content creation, nonlinear editors and DAWs. Um, photo editing doesn't even take a lot of power because a lot of that stuff can be supported with cloud-based processing. Load your photo into Adobe Cloud, and then all your processing instructions are just rendered in the cloud, and then you're just kind of viewing it remotely on a terminal. Like, you used to have a really serious computer to do Photoshop, and anymore you just have to have a quick internet connection and fast storage. I don't think that I think a lot of mainstream computing needs and the requirements for them have largely been resolved, and I think it's the kind of thing. It's like, well, what do you want the interface to look like more than how do you want it to work? Because all that math has already been resolved, and it's to the point where it's become, you know, It's truly an object that nobody even opens up as a container to see what's inside. They just trust that it does what it does. And here, we're going to put this slider here. I actually bet I want it to be a knob. And I want a button next to it that does this thing to change the function of this knob. Actually, let's put a knob on a slider. And then we can have gradient between like the settings of the button. All that math is already taken care of. It's just like, how do you want it to look? What kind of colors do you want your software to have? What kind of profile do you want it to have? What aesthetic are we going to point to as our inspiration for the way this software looks? I think like right now on my on this system right now I'm using, there is like one, two, three, four. There's like five distinct design languages in front of me right now. There's like a very flat design language, and then there's a slightly less flat design language. Windows, of course. And then Amazon. Amazon has this really distinct look to it where things jump out of the screen at me. Restream's dashboard does not have anything that really jumps out. It's pretty vague. The Roadcaster interface is really flat. The Orban interface is really flat. They're actually really similar. They're just different colors. And these are things that like, that it's like a discontinuity that I can put up with on a desktop or even a laptop. But as soon as you start to see that kind of discontinuity on your mobile device, and all of a sudden it feels like something's broken. And I think that's actually the reason that mobile computing, mainstream computing itself, has become so. It's no longer about how does it actually do anything, because everything kind of just works. It doesn't matter if it's an Android product or a Apple product or a Microsoft product. These things they all do the damn thing. It's like
Well,
how
and
much style do you want with your software today?
yeah, and I think that is ultimately what everything's comes down to on almost all fronts in terms of like it's just about choice and stylization instead of like a significant change in capacity to function because at a certain level, yeah, there's not a huge difference. And we see this with televisions especially, but um I think computing is like similarly hitting that type of wall where I'm like, is it um is it a matter of our forms of media hitting a wall as well in terms of like, well, video games and virtual reality are ultimately like the ceiling of what utilizes computing power in terms of like consumer um like access. And that's where I'm like, what is it like the rides at Universal Studios where you're in a vehicle that is physical and there's a screen and it makes you feel like you're moving around in space.
Oh, those
Well, yeah,
crazy augmented reality gimbal systems.
yeah, and it's like I feel like the next thing or the next step with that is like interactivity with that screen or world or whatever, and it's like I'm sure those exist somewhere. I just haven't used it. I know where it exists in the Star Wars thing at Disney World. I think
Mm.
you can like it's like you fly with do the Han and Chewie experience or whatever. Like one person's flying and one person's shooting.
I
So I
wonder, do
think like
you think we'll ever get like an augmented reality type of experience where you go into a space and there's like a movie happening, and you can either follow the movie and follow the main characters and just be like the fly on the wall, or even be a character in the movie, or go completely off script and just wander around in the environment as the movie happens, and then potentially experience explosions or environmental stuff, or
Oh,
literally
most definitely.
walk into the edge of the room.
Have
And
you seen like 360 videos on YouTube?
oh yeah,
Which is like that's like the rudimentary level of that in terms of like, if somebody's able to make a 360 video on YouTube now, in like
I'm thinking of
10
like an
years, I
interactive
think what you're
game.
describing is like gonna probably be standard.
Yeah,
Because I
like
mean,
an interactive game. Like when you get to a certain point, like proximity spawns a character that says that you can interact with or not. It's like, oh, it's like there you are. Hey, come on, look at this thing. And then you look at it, and in the
yeah,
augmented
I've worked on
environment,
like a art like display that did that very thing,
yeah,
but it was more on like you had to use your phone to look at the augmented space, um in terms of like you wouldn't be able to really walk around with a VR headset in a real space
yeah.
unless you could see through it,
And
which is
augmented
where
reality didn't quite
um
hadn't been wasn't mature enough at that point,
right,
probably.
that's where that Apple headset
So
is trying to
fucking cool
find
though.
that. Yeah, it seems to be like the best combination of those two technologies, which again, it's like you really have to have something you can see through.
Of course, Apple did it.
Yeah, of course, but um,
Bastards.
I mean, it's not that Apple did it first. They just did it better in terms of the HoloLens is cumbersome. I mean, I haven't even used it, but everyone that has reported that it's cumbersome, and part of like the way it's tied to a desktop makes it like not the same type of functionality as the um, Mac headset, which seems to have some sort of like wireless capacity.
Well, it's
Um,
like basically an iPhone. Whatever the current top of the line iPhone is, that's it's one you wear on your head and face.
right. I mean, but there's VR headsets that have that wireless
Yeah.
capacity, but they're not
Oh,
AR
like the
headsets.
HTC product, the
Yeah, yeah,
Vive or
yeah,
whatever, Vivi,
yeah.
Vivi.
And it's like you have to wear um like a broadcast pack to, the signal for VR is gonna be so like big that you need, high bandwidth where I don't know which type of I doubt it's Bluetooth. Um but I'd be surprised if they use Bluetooth, but the amount of like information that would have to be broadcast uploaded and downloaded simultaneously would demand some sort of dedicated pack in terms of like it may just be a fucking cell phone.
Oh man, I just had an idea
um
for a AR accessory. It's called the Bluetooth Grill, and it's four buttons that you wear and access with your tongue, or wear on your teeth and access with your tongue. And if you get that's just like one set. If you get two sets of grills, like full mouth, you can get eight buttons, like four on top, four on the bottom. That way, people who want to wear mouth jewelry can also control their AR headset without ever touching anything. But I also foresee a world where we get some like, AR wizards, where like we see people wandering around like waving their arms in air, like they're like you know sort performing some sorcery. And for those people,
well, the eye tracking is supposed to be magic
I know.
in terms of like the way people have described it.
Yeah,
uh,
that's where I how why I foresee the AR wizard or sorcerers emerging.
yeah, which I'm like, I don't know if it would be like, I doubt it would be blinks. That would be too difficult to control
Yeah,
or have involuntary shit. So that's where I'm like, um, or maybe unless it was like long blink or something.
That's why it's Apple's magic. They're never
Yeah.
gonna reveal their algorithm for icon whatever actuation. There's probably some special internal Apple name or code name for that kind of act. I don't know what kind of ridiculous if then statement it looks like.
Or I mean, at the same time, like maybe if you had a headset, they could combine the emotive controller where it's like, yeah, you start using the brain waves to like control your buttons and shit.
Yeah, that's true.
It's totally possible,
It's
but
like
those
maybe it's a combination. Like
headsets just,
it,
yeah.
it recognizes the how much you move the entire headset, the way you blink and look at things all at once. Can probably listen and hear like your blood pressure changes, like from your ears or something.
Hmm.
There's no telling how much like telemetry the device itself derives just from being used. Like it's never. At this point I'm not surprised when Apple includes some kind of hardware feature that's like, what? Who dreamt this up? Like kind of stuff. Because it's really cool, but it's also like who the hell came up with this stuff? Who
Hmm.
what idea genius did they tap into to like get this to come out? And of course, it's a team of like 100 people that they work through to get to these ideas. But of course, it's Apple's going to bring an AR headset to market that works before everyone else does. How long do you think we're going to have to live through this like electric car? I don't even call it cattywampus mess before Apple releases an electric car and shows people how to do it properly. Is it relying on waiting for battery technology? Or maybe they're going to have to come up with a whole new CPU to do it.
I don't know if they're gonna get into cars.
Yeah, I know.
Like it feels like Ford barely wants to stay in cars in terms of how they treated transitioning into electric.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know.
Ford's losing
It,
money hand over fist right now, though. Their whole production line is costing them money because they're not making enough money from electric vehicle sales to pay for the retooling of basically new factories. And because of the relationship with cattle, those vehicles are not qualifying for the full um, credit. Like they GM screwed up too. They're in a similar boat. They've overspent and they're not making enough money from electric vehicles to pay for it. So they're just financing this expansion. I mean, of course, they're always going to finance the expansion into electric vehicles with the sales of gasoline vehicles. But I mean, they like cut off the end that actually. Well, I guess they cut off the end that doesn't make as much money. They have like less. They get make less money on base models that are unoptioned. But I think that's really more of an issue of the dealerships. Like if all of these car companies were just selling in a direct market where you order a vehicle and go pick it up at some place instead of going to the dealership where it's absolutely getting marked up something ridiculous. That seems like the obvious place if they want to get start actually making money and start delivering real customer support. Dealerships can become part of the service network at that
I
point.
don't think that's even profitable. Those things were
They were never profitable.
like
They only
shutting
profitable
down,
by because people with poor financial skills enter into really shitty deals that fuck
like
them in the end.
Carvana.
Yeah, like that stuff's not sustainable.
Cars aren't, I don't understand the notion of like idea that cars would have ever been a profitable endeavor in terms of like
Only if they break all the time. If they break all the time, and you got to constantly buy
that's still
shit.
not profitable
No, of course not.
because then it's like the person selling that is not the one making the money off of it. So it's like the the idea that I'm gonna make like catalytic converters for um 5 types of cars and hope they break down so people buy more, that's also like a terrible model. So that's where I'm
Yeah.
like, there has to be this gets back to the notion of where I'm like, capitalism also depends on things working. So it's like the idea, if I'm gonna sell like a washer or like a nut or a bolt, it has to hold on. So if I'm selling all these like defective nuts and bolts to cut corners and costs, but it's causing like recalls on vehicles, I'm not going to stay in business very long. So there's this notion of like delivering things depends upon those things actually working in a functioning capitalist system. But that's also where I'm like, it's clearly not functioning, and it doesn't seem like there's the capacity for it to keep functioning in this way for much longer, or it has to revert to actual functioning capitalism, which is where I'm like, that's not a bad thing, because and shit works. And I think that's when, in terms of like, the boomers will harken back to when shit, like when we bought something, it was last, yeah, because people weren't trying to fucking exploit. But then apparently all the boomers decided to try to exploit things and start cutting corners, and then start blaming millennials for it. So I don't know
I
at
think there
what
might be
point.
some Gen Xers in there who are also profiting and blaming millennials.
Oh, I mean, I don't blame Gen X, or I don't point fingers at Gen X, because they just sat back and didn't really do shit. So it's like, yeah, they like went in and filled the office jobs, but they didn't come up with the paradigm. They just didn't
Oh
fight back
yeah,
against it. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like, and that's why I don't harp on them, but I also don't like give them any like
That's some like weird
fucking bonus
complicit
points, because
behavior.
they definitely were not rebels. They definitely did not shake up the system, and they like actively were complicit in upholding the status quo. So it's like, I don't condemn them for being born into a status quo that they didn't fight, but I'm also not gonna be like, Gen X was rep. No, they weren't fucking rebelling to shit. They just like had, what was it, Breakfast Club, and like they had a few movies that made them feel like rebels for like going to detention, and that's about like the upper limit of like what Gen X really did. Because even the hacking was like, oh, I'm gonna hack this fucking uh phone, freak this phone, and
That's
call
just
long
taking advantage of a
distance.
system that had no
Right,
built-in
yeah.
security.
So it's not, yeah, I don't really like, again, I'm not gonna bash them actively just because it feels like unnecessarily like, it feels like punching down at a certain
Yeah, I was gonna
point.
say we're not supposed to punch down.
Yeah.
We're supposed to. I mean, unless unless we're punching somebody in the dick. I I'm sorry, man. That last night, that fight when the guy got punched in the dick was like the strangest moment because having just watched that fighter dislocate her arm in the most excruciating way, just moments prior to going to watching something like that, I I would have thought that I would have just turned it off the fight, but for reasons that I'm probably going to hell, I just snickered really loud and started laughing because it like it transported me back to that like horrible period in like middle school when for whatever reason ball tapping was somehow a thing. And even if it wasn't you, when it did happen to somebody for whatever reason, seeing someone get like racked was funny. And of course now when I think about that shit, it's like, no, it's actually not funny, and that could be really dangerous. Like like to very very horribly dangerous. But for whatever reason, when I watch this, and as you as you reminded me, like cups are a thing for a reason. It's still getting hit in the cup doesn't even feel good.
Oh God, no,
And
no, it doesn't feel good at all.
like I wonder how many like sometimes I wonder like why our culture is or our society is so obsessed with athletics, and I don't get it because like football leads to brain injuries.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, like the vast majority of people who play football, even if they've only experienced one injury, it's probably going to involve there's probably a concussion involved. It's like guaranteed. Not to mention like all sorts of trauma to every disc in the spine, all the connective tissue, like all that stuff. And I realize when kids are very young, they're much more plastic and flexible and limber and can bend and man, all of those impacts are cumulative.
Oh yeah.
Like our telomeres are only so long. You can't burn through them too quickly. One of my buddies was talking about how it's taken him longer to recover from this thing than he had expected. He's losing his healing factor. But it reminded me, it's like, wait, humans don't have a healing factor like Wolverine. We don't
They like
regenerate.
to think they do. They will convince themselves that they do. It's really funny. I mean, in a sort of tragic way, but
I mean, our bodies do repair themselves very
just
slowly
not
at the
fast. Yeah.
cellular level. They do really cool stuff like remove foreign objects and like if you've got a piece of tissue in your body that's like somehow moved a few millimeters to a place where it's not supposed to be, when that wound heals, like the body itself will remove the tissue that's not supposed to be in that place. That's just what it does. That's really fucking cool. But it's not like, yeah, it's not Wolverine like watching like putting some spray foam down and watching it dry. It's not fast like that. But, but yeah, it's like it's just one of those moments where I'm reminded, it's like, yep, getting older. Definitely takes longer in the morning to like go through the entire routine of stretches, which probably means that I'm just slowing down more than anything. But I also don't want to speed up too quickly because I don't want to injure myself. And it's really easy to like get really comfortable in a chair and then get startled by fucking UFC and then jump, and next thing I know it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna feel that later this evening.
Yes, being startled when and it causing an injury. That's definitely like part of getting older.
It's like crap. Now I can't sit in this position anymore because it's almost guaranteed to make me regret it later. Uh, Years of
Well,
sitting awkwardly have trained me to sit in unnaturally uncomfortable positions.
and on that note, in terms of like getting older, but also realizing the things that come with that in terms of like being more conscious of how one like tries to approach movement and things. I'm seeing fighters start to like retire earlier and earlier. And it seems like I mean, I think that's a good thing, personally, but it seems like they're more conscious of that wall. Like, I don't know if they're telling each other about it or if they just hit it earlier now because they're starting to fight earlier in MMA. Like, they're not the Thai culture where they start fighting where they're like 2 years old. But
Man, I bet it's like the percentage of fighters that are actually like Anderson Silva and can go like from the dawn of time till the end of time. Like that's like probably point zero 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 like a bunch of zeros before it gets to a one.
hmm
Like that man is made of like the hardest stuff.
yeah.
But I don't think that there are many people that are actually like that can have that kind of career. Like he is truly one of a kind. And I think that a lot of people in at least in at least from what I watch, which is pretty much UFC, because that's just what I seem to be dialed into. Yeah, you're right. They don't last very long. Last night I looked at the card and it's like, I only recognize one person's name, and she lost. But that was one hell of a choke. That was like one of those like, holy crap, I've never seen that before kind of moment.
Yeah, that was like um
It was like an inverted
it would happen
guillotine.
so
It was like an inverted
fast.
reverse guillotine, reverse inverted offhand guillotine with a naked something or other. Like, and it happened so fast. Like I didn't even realize what was happening until it happened.
Yeah.
I had to watch it in slow motion replay to even see what happened and how quickly it happened. It was so fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird though, because like I don't know if it's a matter of the well, I think we kind of hit on this yesterday. But some of the fights are just like you think they're like amateur level
Yeah, the first
because they basically are.
yeah, it was like I couldn't tell if I was watching a pro am or like a just like a what are they just an exhibition fight. It didn't seem like they were matched at all.
Hmm.
It was like watching an instructor do a live demonstration of technique at one point because uh the I don't even remember her name now. Silver, she was wearing silver, but she was not equipped to handle the kind of opponent she was facing, like at all, like completely not prepared for a grappler in any sense. That was like kind of hard to watch too because it's not any fun when you're watching a mismatched fight.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Like I wouldn't want to see like as much as I like talking some trash about Conor McGregor being a loudmouth schnook. He's actually really entertaining to watch, and I wouldn't want to watch him like try to fight Mike Tyson. That would be terrible. I would totally like to watch Conor McGregor fight Mike Tyson. Like
the
shit
the
talking his
premise
shit talking his prime Conor McGregor versus like quietest prime Mike Tyson. Like, you know, that would be the fight to watch. When they're both in their physical prime, where Conor McGregor has the like highest potential or chance of surviving.
I feel like wasn't that why people basically watched the Jake Paul versus or Logan Paul versus Mayweather. It's like you want to see that person get the shit beat out of them, but it's like it's not. It doesn't necessarily always turn out that way
Yeah.
for one reason or another.
Yeah, I think the only way that the fight that I want to see could happen is in like celebrity death match in full claymation because time travel doesn't actually exist, unfortunately.
It feels like we're getting closer and closer to what Celebrity Deathmatch was trying to do in terms of like, I don't.
Oh man.
It's only a matter of time before fucking somebody like one of those celebrities like dies in there.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. Like,
Yeah.
or if it has, they've managed to cover it up so securely. Like, really surprised that no one's died yet. The lessons retained from the Colosseum in the era of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Just don't. Whatever you want to do is fine. Just don't let him die. Shit.
Man, what is it? Tyson Ngannou versus or not Tyson, Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. And I was like, I know I crossed my wires there. Um, but that one, it's like I feel like it's the same thing as Conor versus Floyd, where Francis Ngannou is obviously an amazing athlete and could do what most men can't do in terms of like basically everything. So that's where I'm like, this is not to say that Francis Ngannou wouldn't be capable of competing against Tyson Fury at some point in his life, but the first match out is so premature in terms of like it doesn't even really make sense for somebody to like start off that high. It just is like a it's like unnecessarily shooting too high when you could like ease into that because you have the capacity to get there at some point, but like starting off there is not going to be in anybody's benefit. So it's just I I don't know. That feels like ego. Um,
Oh, oh,
but
they're
I
gonna
guess when
fight October 28th in right,
yeah, it's like not far off, man, at all.
Arabia. That's not very far at all. That's like 3 months. 3 months and a couple of weeks.
Which again, he's been training for like probably about a year now. But Tyson Fury's been doing this shit his entire life.
How many years has
So
Fury been training to protect his titles? Feels like forever now.
yeah. Well, and the issue is like Deontay Wilder is basically Francis Ngannou's physicality, but I guess he's just like slightly smaller. Um, well, I think he's taller, but his slightly lighter. I won't say smaller.
Man,
Because I don't know his walk around weight.
he's been holding titles since like 2015. Tyson Fury has been a champion for, almost a decade at this point. That's crazy. Yeah, November 28, 2015 becomes unified heavyweight world champion.
So Deontay Wilder is actually significantly lighter than Francis Ngannou. That um he oh wait, hold on. No, he is significantly lighter. Okay. Um I guess his heaviest was 238, which Francis comes in at like 258. And that's like he definitely doesn't have any fat to lose at 258 pounds, which is what pretty crazy, but that's 3 inches shorter than Deontay Wilder. Um,
Tyson Fury is 269 pounds.
but this is crazy. Like, 83. What? So their reaches are roughly the same.
I always got
as far as
those silly
like
arms.
Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou, which for that happens sometimes where people their arms will be slightly longer than their height. Like it's effectively like if you're supposed to hit the Vitruvian physique, like your arm, like your wingspan equals your height.
Yep.
But that doesn't always like pan out necessarily. And some people's will be longer and some will be shorter. But when people like are at that you know, 6'4" range, sometimes their wingspan will be like significantly longer because that's the same shit with John Jones. His wingspan's like 84 inches or something. Um, and it's like, was he supposed to be 84 inches tall, or did his arms keep growing, or is it like possible to expand your wingspan from lifting your shoulder, and focusing on your shoulders? I don't know which one of those things is the answer necessarily, but it's definitely like you'll see it in fighters where it seems to be giving them an advantage with
Well,
their wings
I know that
being
people who have experienced really severe tech neck, where their shoulders tend to curl in and they kind of hunch over and bend their neck back, kind of look like a buzzard. That person, if they sit like that for too long, will have severely reduced mobility, and their wingspan will also be impacted. Versus somebody who's able to sit upright and extend their, um, is it cervical spine? That person will be able to get their experience a full wingspan.
well, and the height goes down too. So that I wonder if it's proportionate.
Yeah, I bet it's disproportionate because I've noticed that the people who have extreme tech neck and tech back with the curved shoulders, they can reach really far forward. Like it's like, whoa, how did you get that far across the table?
Well, forward, but you have to be able to have the shoulder mobility to go sideways because
Yeah,
that's where it's like if they can't if they can't open their arms to the full like 180-degree plane, then that's going to limit their wingspan there too.
I mean, I think we're supposed to be able to go a bit further than that,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
we're supposed to, but it's like
but yeah, if you can't
if
even
you
get
go any
180
further,
degrees, then there's a definitely a problem.
yeah. I think we'd probably be able to go to like two 200 or 210 maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but that's like some people can go all the way around and then flip their arms over and then people will be like they're double jointed, but that's not how,
No, they're just
obviously
they've got
it's
really
not.
really plastic connective tissues and
Yes,
ligaments that are
exactly.
very pliable. And the bursa lining the joint as where it meets the socket, that stuff hasn't been eroded away to where it's like bone on bone. They can still move. That's like a very underutilized body that can still do those things. By underutilized, I mean like low stress environments and not pushed hard, because turns out human bodies are not resilient, and just simple activities like shoveling anything will cause stress on our forearms, which then feeds back into our shoulders, and then we've got a whole cluster of nerves that run through our shoulder that all like end up in our hands. You don't even have to be like stressing out your hands, just stress out your shoulders, and all of a sudden your hands will stop working. That stuff's fucked up. And that can happen to
Yeah.
anyone at any age, at any amount of like regular physical activity. You just pick up something wrong, and or something else happens. Something gets yanked, and next thing you know, your arm doesn't work. It comes back, of course, in a few hours or maybe a few minutes, but just it's just crazy to me. Like I see people just like some of these some sports have become so extreme that I'm not even willing to call them the same thing that I thought they were before. Like riding a mountain bike at one point did not involve racing down single tracks, hitting these crazy wooden roller coaster ride inspired ramps, and jumping over and across things to land on like a 2 by 12 worth of wood to have to stop and then do a very slow technical section that's also like 12 feet off the ground, and if they fall they're probably definitely going to break something. Like mountain biking today is like a it's a completely different thing from what I remember when I was in high school. And some of the people that do it are like insane, like absolutely crazy. I don't get it. And then I watch videos of people like jumping off of things, like at one point, like it was, you see people like, jumping off of quarries into bodies of water. It's like, oh yeah, cool. And then cliff diving was like more visible. And the other day I was watching videos of people doing stupid things, and I saw a video. I think it was Steve-O. He jumped off of like a Holiday Inn into the shallow end of the pool, like off the roof, like the fifth floor of or maybe it was a Marriott or something. But he jumps off the roof of a building into the pool.
Yeah.
Like,
He just jumped off a bridge in London. I think it was London. Got, you know,
did he get arrested for that? Because I hope he got arrested for that.
he got detained. I won't say he got arrested, but he
Yeah.
definitely got detained by authorities, and I think he got a fine or something. But it's like, yeah, they were like, "Hey, man, you're gonna cause people to start jumping off of here," which I don't know if that's like, um, if it had that effect or not. But I could see, definitely makes a good point where they don't mean for fun.
I mean, yeah, we don't we don't need to. Well, there was
Well, because it doesn't always work, and that's
there
what
was a
it's like. You don't
time.
want a bunch of people trying to do that as like a
Yeah.
means of going that route, and then it not working, and then they become like paralyzed or whatever, and then it's like, oh, thanks, Steve-O. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
And
that's
that's how that shit goes. And then he's like, I didn't do it, man.
I
And it's
even did
like,
it with his freaking frog box voice. It's actually a medical condition. It's people who don't speak with their voice box. It's like a throat speaking,
mm,
where the enunciation occurs in the throat itself. Like their larynx just doesn't larynx. And there are various forms of treatment for this that can help people to train their larynx to function. But it's one of those things that it's hard to understand how the behavior begins where it begins, because for some people it begins in childhood. Like there are some people who just have speech impediments, and it could have started out with something really subtle like a ear infection, and you know they couldn't hear for the first 9 months of their life, and that dramatically affected the way that they hear everything. And but Steve-O, man, I'm pretty sure his voice is like the result of booze and like cigarettes, among other smoked things, but a lot of booze and yelling, like asking, "Is it
yeah, that
rolling?"
dude has done all the drugs.
Yeah, he got a tattoo in the back of a moving vehicle on uneven terrain at high speed, like. Had to have been the drugs. There's no way anybody in their right mind would come up with that kind of shit. That's one of those things where it's like, I think like if a normal person started behaving like that, people would be really concerned. because there's always the belief that we can get people to behave a certain way by saying, hey, you shouldn't do these things, you'll get hurt, and most people care. They don't want to get hurt or hurt other people. But I think that there is like certain type of individual who just doesn't care, and so they're going to do it anyways. But instead of locking them up, because they're not really hurting other people and they're not really causing too much like collateral damage, or that it's like, well, we can't really punish them for something that didn't really cause any real harm. They didn't hurt themselves or anyone else yet, so we can't really punish them for that. And it generates economic activity, which is like, the name of the game. But also it's so dumb, and it encourages people to do dumb shit. And no matter how many times they can say, "Hey, remember, we're professionals." Like that means they actually know how to do any of these things. I think at this point, it's hard to tell if when someone says professional, if they mean I get paid to do this, or I am like an absolute pro, like an expert. I guess that if they were to be an expert, they'd just be an expert. One could also be a
Yeah,
professional and an expert. Okay, maybe that's the distinction.
that's true in terms of like all experts don't get paid.
Yeah,
Um,
and not all
that
professionals
doesn't
know
make
anything
them,
about what they're doing.
yeah, that doesn't make them experts, which is crazy. Um, that's where this whole like,
That's why capitalism is
ex-
going to try to find some place to go and die.
I mean, and that's where I guess I look at like the conflation of professional with expert for the sake of elevating the professionals that are not experts. And um, experts will do it to themselves in terms of like say I'm an expert in cybersecurity. Well, I am an expert in cybersecurity, but then I start like trying to give professional advice about like non cybersecurity related anything that would be immoral, unethical, but not illegal under capitalism, which is where there's like some places that become illegal, like you can't give like legal advice, for example,
Yeah.
ironically. Um, but like I think it's like accounting advice, legal advice.
Anything that requires certification, probably.
Most yeah, it's mostly to do with certification, medical advice, but it's also whether those certification boards are like state recognized or state authority, I think, or state or federal. So it's like, you get your medical license from a state and sometimes a federal authority. You get your um like legal uh certification from a state authority. So there's like levels of like if you pretended to have an Amazon web server or Amazon web service certification, that's not going to probably be illegal unless you got a job and made money, then it becomes larceny. So that's where like making money under false pretenses and being discovered can then become like drift into illegal territory, um, and oftentimes become illegal, which is where like the Titan sub, because they lied that uh, their clauses aren't going to hold up.
Yeah, but you have like, I think you have a year after your certification ends to where like there's the window of like, oh, you can recertify and everything's good. But if you wait, then you have to go through a whole additional set of hoops and ladders and shit. But like Titan, they just they didn't even
They never
certify.
got
They never
certified.
got
They never got
classified.
certified at all.
Yeah, they ignored it because the regulatory bodies were not innovating enough for some bullshit excuse.
Well, and it was like specifically the things that they were using weren't
Yep,
certified for the depths, and that's
they're getting the crap
like you're
suit out of them
saying,
right
there's
now.
classes, and those like classes are not necessarily going to. This is where it gets interesting in terms of like, because the people who were buying tickets onto the vessel were civilians. They were not of the like the onus for them to know whether this thing was actually classified or classed the way it was meant to be to go to those depths. They would not have had the capacity to know whether or not it was. So it's like the notion of their capacity to sign that clause was compromised by their level of knowledge on the subject of submarines, which allowed Stockton Rush to lie to them effectively and make it appear as if the vessel that they were buying tickets aboard was classed and certified when it had not. It was the exact opposite
Yeah.
scenario.
I think I read that like the Deep Challenger, the James Cameron sub that went to the bottom of the ocean, that thing is not classed because there is not a class of submarine. There had not been a class of submarines rated for that depth at that point, so it was not classed. It could have probably exceeded the requirements for the deepest classification that they had at that moment.
But he was also not taking passengers.
Yeah, it was just a solo ship. It didn't risk a second human when he went down there, or when his engineering buddy who helped him design and build it went down there on his turn.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Huge difference.
Like there were
like you can't sue yourself,
especially if you got crushed at the bottom of Challenger Deep.
Right,
Who's gonna even find your ship if it gets crushed down there? You're gonna find a paste of a human on the seafloor, getting consumed by cyanobacteria or whatever lives down there. But yeah, like there's just when I think about like the absurdity of let's build it ourselves. Screw these warnings. We know what we're doing. It's all it all just reeks of arrogance and hubris. And then the other day when I was watching this thing about the SpaceX platform that just ate itself because they didn't use the same kind of techniques that NASA had developed to prevent their launch pad from getting destroyed. And I'm just sitting there wondering, like, well, these guys, I thought these guys worked for NASA. I thought they all knew what they were doing. Why didn't they build an appropriate launch platform right off the bat? and then I think more about like the toilet that failed on their space capsule, and like, is it really a good idea to hand all this stuff over to the private sector? Is it really? Is the expedited, is the extra urgency really worth how this is going? Because before everything seemed to be pretty stable. Just wasn't getting enough money. Is it because people thought it cost too much? Is this somehow cost less because it'll eventually pay off to shareholders and board members instead of the the rest of the world all at once? I mean, I know not everyone uses a microwave, but that stuff's cool. Velcro is cool. Tang is awesome, but even though that wasn't really developed for NASA, Buzz Aldrin just liked it. But they still sent it up with them, so. Frozen ice cream or dried ice cream. That stuff's actually really interesting. The astronaut ice cream.
Yeah, it was definitely like something you try as a kid, and you're like, "This isn't ice cream." You're like, "Yeah, no shit, kid."
It's like, what is this chalk? And why do I want to keep eating it?
Yeah, you don't. I can't imagine that being like. I'd rather not eat it than eat that shit just because it's like dried ice cream
Well,
in
you know,
space. Like,
if you take the
nah,
vanilla
bro.
and you put like a few drops of liquid smoke and Worcestershire sauce on it, and then run a lighter across it a few times, it almost tastes like a steak.
I was like, "Where's this going?"
I'm serious. I'm actually serious. I don't recommend it. It's actually pretty horrible,
Well, I
but
mean,
it
their actual like food is way better
yeah, I know.
now. Um, which is like they'll
The
have actual steaks on there.
yeah,
So I'm like, I don't need to.
novelty astronaut food from the 80s was pretty terrible. Kids these days don't know how good they've got their like, astronaut food supplement pouches and like the like camping foods, backpacking foods used to be this like dice roll of is this going to turn out like the picture on the package versus now some of that stuff is amazing. Like Sheila found these pouches of Indian food that are like they actually taste really good. Just set it in some
Yeah, those were good.
set it in boiling water for a few minutes and then pour it over rice and, and boom, curry. It tasted amazing. and and so like what he's like, what do you mean I can have curry out in the middle of the woods and all I got to do is boil some water and make some rice? I'm there. I can get a meal in peace with like absolutely amazing scenery away from a bunch of people. That seems like it's an awesome idea. Now,
So
like,
this new astronaut ice cream looks way better.
yeah, I need to find this stuff
I don't
now.
know if I need to try it or what.
Freeze dried ice cream. Are you at astronautfoods.com?
No, I'm just looking on Amazon.
Oh no, this is the original astronaut ice
Astronaut
cream.
Foods is the second, yeah. The original.
Ugh, I don't know. That doesn't. Does that mean it was like produced in the late '60s? Like
They have
that's.
the original stock.
Oh god, new old stock. It's probably still good.
Yeah,
I have
for
every
sure.
expectation that this. They just like put a new sticker on the outside of the container. They go into a room and shave off a giant cube of it whenever they need to do another production run.
So it wasn't even until 2016 that somebody can be confirmed to have sent it to space.
Oh,
So it
really?
seems like this shit was like a gimmick
From the get go.
when they, yeah, from the very get go. Because it's like on the FAQ, do astronauts really eat this and has it been to space? And it's like, it's a simple yes or no fucking question.
They won't
Like,
answer it.
yeah, like
Bastards.
you have to give this long ass explanations. Do astronauts really eat this? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Well, they convinced themselves that their space peppers made their tortillas into tacos. So they're unheated or maybe partially microwaved tortillas with space meat. So I'm willing to accept that astronauts are willing to accept a broader range of definitions for things. because they have to be so precise with their work. They have to be able to have some flexibility in other areas. I mean, I
I just
appreciate precision, but I also like flexibility.
I wonder if this originally was created to like save a ice cream company that was going out of business and had a bunch of fucking stock that they needed to like sell without throwing it out or some shit. Cause I'm like, who thought to freeze dry fucking ice cream if it wasn't actually for
Oh
astronauts?
my
Because it doesn't
goodness.
sound
It
like
was developed by the Whirlpool Corporation under contract for NASA for Apollo, but it was never actually used.
probably because it tasted like shit.
Probably because it was being made in a Whirlpool dishwasher machine instead of and that's probably why it turned out the way it did. They used a Whirlpool dishwasher or a laundry machine instead of having a crank and a bunch of paddles, and it just dried it out like crazy. They used a bunch of nitrogen or something. Who knows? God,
Because then
Whirlpool.
it's like I see the freeze dried fruits that they sell as well, where I'm like, this shit goes well in cereal, but I wouldn't eat just.
Oh, you get
I'd
really
eat a.
sick if you ate a bunch of like freeze dried strawberries just raw. They would start expanding in your stomach and they would get all like loaded up with whatever liquid is in your
But
stomach.
also, you probably just get sick if you eat strawberries because there's a bunch of shit on them now.
Oh yeah.
Where I'm like, oh my god, for a while there would be a point where I'd eat fruit and it would like I'd get these like crazy ulcers, and um pineapple does it because of the acidity, but fucking strawberries started doing it where I'm like, what's going on with this shit? But apparently the parasites are so bad that they have to spray it, and fucking even then when they spray it, it doesn't get them all. So you're gonna be eating a shitload of parasites unless you put it in vinegar or whatever the thing is you're supposed to put them into to get all the like shit that didn't
Oh, I think
get killed
some
off
with
by the.
some fruits or vegetables you can do it with like a salt, high salt sodium content water. Just pour a bunch of salt in water and it'll draw them out.
Yeah, something.
But not
But
all
it's
things
like
need
if you
sodium.
don't if you don't do that, then you might as well not eat that shit because it's gonna have a negative effect because of fucking parasites. Where I'm like, man, the like that looking at the freeze dried fruits made me think about like how our fruit uh supply chain is just so fucked, and like um
It doesn't happen very
shit that's
often
meant to be
anymore.
healthy is like almost as harmful.
Well, I don't read about it as often as maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but I remember there was a period of time when there were E. coli outbreaks and listeria outbreaks all the
Oh
time
yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
somebody was shitting in the fucking strawberry field or the spinach field or whatever field, and entire like regions worth of spinach or strawberries or other fruits or vegetables were being like pulled off shelves, and health emergencies were all over the media. It was kind of fucked up, like on multiple levels. Like, why the hell are these people shitting in the fields, and why aren't there facilities for these people to drop the deuce so they don't have to shit in the
I
field?
mean, you sure it's people?
I don't know, maybe not, but
Because it's probably like animals, which is where I'm like, or they're using um untreated fertilizer,
mm,
like potentially.
oh, then that's even worse because uh that's human inflicted bullshit.
Yeah, because that's why I'm
Oh,
like, you know, fertilizer is meant to be treated before it gets used in
yeah, it
an
has to be
actual
cooked.
field. Yeah. So that's where I'm like, I I can imagine some low whether it's a low grade fertilizer or a low grade operation that doesn't necessarily know how fertilizer works, getting some shit messed up. Cause like it would actually take a lot of human shit. But here's the thing: if there's a bunch of workers that are migrants that don't have like facilities, where are they supposed to shit? So there is the possibility that it's like the laborers that were picking the um crops not having actual bathrooms, and
Man, I
then
mean,
yeah, like that's
let's
possible too.
maybe
That
it's
is
like
definitely a
maybe
possibility.
it's the whole Sunday though. Like the laborers don't have anywhere to shit because the big ag isn't providing them shitters, and then further down the train chain they aren't being sanitized properly during processing, and packaging, and then so it's like compounded by at multiple stages. And then you get machines that aren't being sanitized properly, and so bacteria colonizes that machine and then distributes all over everything that goes through it for the next 2 weeks before somebody in Iowa gets sick, and then they figure it out.
Yeah, it seems really easy to have a single point of contamination if the supply chain is not like rigorously monitored.
I mean,
So
that's
that's where,
that's kind of what happened during COVID when one
yeah,
person
yeah,
goes in and everyone comes out with COVID, and then that entire batch of meat is then disposed of because we didn't know enough about any of this stuff at that point. But who wants to eat some COVID tainted meat anyways? Nobody. Because, all signs point to the fish or the wet market. Of course, that's not tainted meat so much as it's sick people being around animals. It's crazy to think that that was only a couple of years ago, and everything is kind of normalizing completely. Like occasionally, I see a person wearing a mask, but lately it's because of the air quality warnings, not because
yeah.
not because there was a hot spot of people getting sick. And occasionally, I see a person wearing a mask, and maybe it's because they're sick. I'd rather go with it. That's because that's the reason, as opposed to like, wait, did I not get the air quality warning that I can't seem to see or something? Because right now the sky is straight up white. I haven't seen a cloud because it's just there's no blue.
Well, and that's where I'm like, did the COVID tracking just stop?
Oh yeah, it totally just came to a close. They probably ran out of their emergency funding, and then there was no. I bet nobody added a line item for the budget to keep it going. Once the federal program ends, then
Yeah, if you look at the COVID data tracker, it's like down 20 deaths down 20% in the last week. Um, data through death data through July 8th, posted July 13th. So it seems like they are doing weekly updates.
hey, we're still number one.
Yeah,
Still number one by a huge number.
by a lot. That's crazy.
A third of the U.S. population got it. That's that's insane. A 30th of the U.S. population died. 663,000 active cases.
And it's like at this point, I haven't gotten it. So it's like I don't I don't know if we've cycled through the mutations that I wonder like what blood types are more susceptible to catching it. And that's where I'm like, I wonder if the mutations that have persisted are continually going towards a specific blood type or not, where it feels like to me the longer it goes, the less likely I am to get it
Well, I think that
based on
it's
my experience, but I could be wrong.
my understanding from the last time there was like a real update about it is that it's the trend is that it's mutating towards being less virulent and being less severe in terms of when people get it. They have if they have a severe case or not. But that still doesn't change the predisposition towards stroke or weird blood clotting issues, um, inflammatory disease is still like a concern. Long COVID, the whole long COVID thing, might be the real COVID. Like that's the actual condition, like long term, like thing that people end up with if it's like severe, instead of having like a all out near death experience.
Kind of like HIV and AIDS,
Yeah,
it seems like.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it does. There do seem to be varying. Obviously, with a virus like that, it's gonna have that type of like variation, but it definitely seems like we're past the die in 2 days
Yeah.
or less point.
Hey, all the people that didn't want to listen to the advice, they got the really hardcore shit, and they, unfortunately took one for the team, and they burned out that strain. Those strains don't exist anymore, except in a lab, probably, or at least not in numbers that can be tracked because they're not spreading. And everyone else has either gotten it or has been vaccinated or isn't just isn't going to get it because we have a whole series of behaviors that you know I avoid large crowds. If I have to be around a bunch of people, it better be outdoors. Timing trips to the market when during off hours, they're the least likely to run into crowds.
Yeah, those are definitely, ways to stay alive, seems like.
Yeah, it, I never thought that my desire to like find solitude would be such a a self-preservative behavior, but man, it really is.
Hmm.
That said, I can't think I can name anyone that I know, like from my social life or my past social life that got COVID. So no,
Well, and I think part of it is like there.
I mean only 100 million people in the United States got it. It's
When's the last time you went to like a festival?
been a long time, but I went to a
Yeah,
baseball game a couple of years ago, or a year or so ago, last year.
that's way different. Baseball games are like very underpopulated a lot of times,
Yeah.
depending on,
Okay, so
which part of the
that was
season.
the most densely populated event that I have attended in the last 3 years. It was a baseball game. Almost
Which
all of my
which team?
activities, it was the Cubs versus the Reds in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I guess, and it depends on like they're probably playing a series, right?
Yeah,
And it's like depending on which game in the series is like if it's like on a Friday, it's gonna be way more populated than if it's the one on like a Wednesday or some shit.
Yeah.
um,
I think it was a Wednesday game or a Thursday game or a Tuesday game even. It was a very
but
light
those
crowd.
two teams have like yeah, they're definitely gonna have like a base crowd, but
I was
if
seated
it
with
was
some
like
Cubs fans. I went to the game with some Cubs fans, but we were sitting in front of this guy and his girlfriend who were Reds fans, but he was rooting for them to lose because they had 99 losses that year. At that point, he wanted to get them. He wanted to be at the game where they lost their 100th game, which would make it the second time they've lost 100 games in a season or something like that. It was like a fight for who was the losingest baseball team in the league that year. And we were present for that showdown. I've, I've only the only baseball game that I've been to was like the Oakland A's versus the Kansas City Royals when the Oakland A's were like the best of the best, and I got to watch Bo Jackson, arguably one of the greatest baseball players to exist, like hit a home run off of one of the most unhittable pitchers that ever existed. And so going from that to watching the two losingest teams in baseball lose to each other, it was a very different experience. It was like a whole different version of baseball. I mean, a really, really entertaining version of it. But that game happened so much faster in front of me than I realized. Like in my memory, a baseball game takes a lot longer than it took that day. But
yeah, I guess it depends on um the play. You know, sometimes it'll be like they're up and down, but sometimes it'll be like ball, fucking foul, ball,
pop up.
and then two more. Yeah, another like they'll just keep hitting
Well, it
fouls
was
and
it
shit
was
like
it was funny.
that.
Like it was like that. It was like ball, foul, and then they would hit it, and it would like land like between players, and so somebody would get on base, and sometimes they'd make it to second, or sometimes they get thrown out. But that was the game. I don't. I think one person hit a home run. There was like one, or maybe two. But it was like a steady scoring game, not too exciting, not too nothing terrible. It was, I mean, it was like they were just playing baseball. It was actually a pretty good game, but it wasn't like exciting. Maybe the last couple innings were exciting because that's when the tension really mounts. But I also don't. That was also like the second professional baseball game that I've been to, and I actually kind of want to go watch more baseball. Like IU is home to a really nice baseball stadium that I drive by every so often when it's lit up, and it just
Yeah, it
looks
is really nice.
it looks fucking awesome. I want to go see a IU baseball game at some point. It looks amazing from the what is it, the bypass, the exchange.
Yeah, the football stadium is nice too. I mean,
Yeah, man, the football. Well, that's always been pretty nice. It's its own little mini coliseum.
yeah,
It's not a mini anything though. It's gigantic. It's like big enough for any any football any kind of football exhibition or game. Can handle anything. And if they can't, they'll just overflow into the parking lot and drop some giant projection screens, and
well, I guess it's just like we have a really good baseball team too. Um, I don't know if they won a championship. I know the soccer team did at one point, but it's like I think the baseball team did, but it's like everybody cares about basketball here, so it was like the baseball team won and nobody gave a shit, if I remember correctly.
Indiana baseball. Oh, this is their actual website. Like every other IU related website, it looks really good. Let's see the 2020.
Yeah, in 2019 they won the became the Big Ten regular season champions. I think they have like the baseball team is fairly good regularly if I'm not mistaken, which is why they have a really nice stadium.
Yeah. Well, that only makes sense. Like, athletics programs that are really good end up with good facilities, good equipment. They attract better talent, and next thing you know, they're like a force to be reckoned with that develops a legacy. Like IU basketball has that kind of thing going on. Are they ever have they reached the same kind of notoriety as that they did under that madman who threw shit and kicked people? Like I remember at one point, like I think when I moved here, first moved here, like when I was like 10, people like acted like IU football was a big deal, but it never seemed like a really, it never seemed like they'd won. Like every time Ohio State came to Bloomington, they always seemed to win.
That's true.
Like,
But that's because our football team was notoriously like shit most of the time, except when Crean was there.
yeah,
Um,
but that didn't even last very long.
well, because he died, right? He got cancer or some shit.
Yep.
It was like a terrible tragedy for the football team. I mean, him too, in terms of like obviously nobody wants anybody to die like that, but
Yeah.
it was like they finally had their
It finally started to seem like
coach.
something was going in the right direction, and then
Yeah. Tom Crean. Oh wait. No, he's a basketball. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
let's see, find a list. Tom Allen, present. Kevin Wilson, 11 to 16. Bill Lynch, 7 to 10. Terry Hopner, I don't even remember these names. Jerry DiNardo, Cam Cameron, Bill Mallory was from 84 to 96. Uh,
Maybe it was Cam Cameron. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Oh,
the
Hepner. Hepner died of brain cancer. That's who it was in 2007. Yeah, because that would have been first of my like end of my undergrad.
Man,
Yeah, he was only there for 1 year.
I don't remember any of this stuff. It looks like Tom Allen has the second best percentage right after Bill Mallory in recent years, at least. Got to go back to like 1934 through 1947 to Bo McMillan to get a higher percentage.
Yeah, IU football has not been good.
James Sheldon back in 1905 to 1913, 0.57. Oh, no, Madison Gonterman, 1896 through 1897, had a .7 .81 percentage. Yeah, we got to go back to the 1800s to find the highest win percentage.
Oh shit, that's okay. So check this out. The coach before Hepner basically doubled the win rate. So that's where it
Yeah,
was like it was a huge turnaround
yeah, because
for
DiNardo
IU
has a
football at the time.
.229 winning percentage. Man, that sucks. Holy crap. Less than 25%.
Yeah, that's fucking.
Oh,
you'd
oh.
rather
He's
flip a coin.
he's winning just over 1 out of 5. Just slightly over 1 out of 5. That's
Yeah, that was like they even have a whole column for versus Purdue. That's funny. Um, wow, I guess we've gotten better against Purdue in recent years.
Bill Mallory. No, he wasn't the best. Kevin Wilson had a really good record against Purdue. 3 versus 3 to 1.
Yeah, it's like the
That's
what
seventy-five
is it? Ed,
percent. That's 75% win ratio over Purdue.
Steim has the best one. I don't know how to if that's how you pronounce it. Ewald.
I bet it's Waldo. I bet
Why
the
would they put the E?
Waldo E Steinem. Stein. I bet it's like an issue of a clerical error. Because Waldo E. Stein makes a lot of sense. Ewald O. Stein sounds like someone screwed it up.
No, he's got a whole fucking a whole page.
Damn. Well,
Ewald
that goes my theory.
Jumbo. In
Jumbo.
case you were questioning, Jumbo's his nickname. Jumbo Stein. Um,
He had 3 legs.
yeah, his career football coaching record was pretty good. 59, 23, and 4. So he was a great coach relative to the rest of the IU football coaches.
Yeah.
Damn, head basketball coach in Nebraska too.
Holy shit, he did really well there too. 55-14.
Wow. Yeah. Good for this guy.
Total including Indiana 68-22 as the basketball
Died
coach.
of stomach cancer too.
What were they?
At the age of 37, Jesus Christ.
Man, they had to have been drinking straight mercury back then or something.
Whoa. Ooh.
They're like they're grinding up their mercury or their opium and cocaine with like raw mercury coated mortar and pestle systems and just licking right off the pestle.
Or maybe coaching just is very stressful and
Yeah.
makes people predisposed to cancer or some shit. I wonder how many of these people died of cancer.
I wonder if it was like an issue of handling basketballs and the kind of materials that were used like
Yeah.
and
You
since
never
that's
know,
just
man.
always on their hands, it might get on their face or in their foods in their mouth. You know,
Those
1886 to
old
23, that's definitely an era where there's like zero chemical regulation. Man, that guy's really 37. This guy's accomplished more before he died than like most people will in their entire lives.
mm-hmm.
God damn.
Yeah, I guess you gotta do a lot if you're gonna be claiming to be a coach, right?
Yeah. 5 football championships, 3 basketball championships. Like what the crap? Really good record in both sports. Did football and basketball at all 3 schools. Okay.
I wonder how many coaches or like former athletes that got injured or something too.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Because what kid is like, I'm gonna grow up and be a coach. I want to grow up and be Phil Jackson.
I think the kid who is growing up is like, I want to grow up to be like Phil Jackson. Actually, probably has the right head on their shoulders. They're like, I don't want to run around that court, but I'll definitely tell everyone what to do. That guy, it's like, I want to find my own shack. That came out real weird.
Sounded different in my head.
Man, speaking of shack, I just watched this video. Apparently, he installed some like $500,000 koi pond in his house. Just had like a group of contractors show up and dig a hole and line it, and then bring in a bunch of fish to the tune of like $500,000. Big guy has the biggest
Wait, outside or inside the house?
outdoors.
Okay, I was gonna say that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's it. I think if it was indoors, it'd be an aquarium, technically.
That's why I was wondering because I'm like, I mean, it wouldn't if it was a pond inside. That's where I'm like, okay, that's new in terms of.
I mean, it might be indoors. His house isn't normal. No, it's definitely outside. And I don't think I actually know what his giant house compound actually looks like because I've only ever seen like chunks of it.
They brought him a box that says Shaquille O'Neal.
Chicory. That's Shaq's house. Shaq house. Google Map. Surely Google Maps can show
I
us
feel
like
like that's like a
habitat.
koi habitat. Yeah, this is bigger than a pond.
Hey, it's a $500,000 freaking koi pond. Like how for $500,000, that's a portion of a zoo.
I always, I don't know if it was unspoken or unsaid, but I always thought that koi ponds had like a minimalist element to them, and this does not have that.
Yeah, this is. It looks like the kind of resort that people pay a lot of money to go sunbathing at. Or it looks like a space that you find at a resort where people go sunbathing, like in the mountains or something. It looks like travel literature for, come to Thailand, not Thailand. Yeah, maybe Thailand. Come to Japan,
Shackland.
Shackland. Big ups to Shaq for having the coolest freaking yard. Like, man.
Well, I think what was it? Rick Ross had a fucking car show at his house and like in his front yard.
It was all his cars too, right?
No, I
Oh.
mean like an actual car show.
Okay.
Like they would have it at a convention center, and his neighbors got all pissed. It was like I don't know how many thousands of people, but it was definitely in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. Um,
Of course, he didn't have like a permit for that kind of gathering.
I mean, I think he might have.
Oh, he did. Well, hopefully he
I think
did,
he did.
because, man, that's
I
just
think
crazy.
that's the only reason he didn't get in trouble is
Yeah.
because
No,
he probably
he would
did
have
get
to.
the
He'd have to have
permits.
a permit. Otherwise, the fire department would show up and start like towing things
Yeah,
because fire hazards and the like. But they have to be notified to
totally.
be aware that, hey, something might happen here, so be on alert.
Yeah,
I,
they had general admission.
yeah, it was definitely permitted then.
Holy shit. Yeah, because I guess like, oh my God, general admission was $325. So he was finessing people.
Oh man,
It was the Fire Fest that didn't actually fall apart.
this is a donk convention.
Yeah.
Holy,
Oh yeah.
holy crap! No wonder he charges that much money. Donks are like expensive to move, and I actually really like donks. I think they're some of the coolest cars. They remind me of like Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars from like my childhood, with oversized wheels that are just are ridiculously
Oh
oversized.
my God, he made so much money off of this. Are you seeing the like list of costs if you want to participate? Oh my God, this dude, whatever you want to call him, he's not dumb.
No, 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 definitely not. Just looking at these pictures, there's like millions upon millions of dollars just in cars, just chilling in his yard.
$3,500 to be a vendor.
He was able to give the prize winners $300,000, all totaled. Oh my god! Exceptional radio. Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.